the revelation was sent from a higher stance to all mankind. Unzila ilayk, unzila ilayk, it was revealed unto you. فلا يكن, let there be no يكن في صدرك, in your heart, any haraj. What is the word haraj? The word haraj is to feel some narrowness on the inside. Some narrowness on the inside in where you're feeling a burden. But here's the thing, is that the ayah says, فَلَا يَكُنْ فِي صَدْرِكَ حَرَجْ, let there not be any burden in your heart. But what does that mean? Does that mean that the Prophet ﷺ was feeling a certain burden? Or does that mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about فَلَا يَكُنْ, that so that there shall not be any burden that you would feel in your heart? And this is really important because in the Quran, there's a lot of discussion that comes in where it is directing its words at probably the pain, or probably a matter. Like for example, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered Musa, he said, فَقْذِفِيهِ فِي التَّابُوتِ, then just put him and throw him in that like bassinet, and then فَلْيُلْقِهِ الْيَمْ, let the yam, let the water, let the sea is going to do such and such. And you could see that same thing when you see in the ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when they talked about the people in the akhirah, and they would say أنطقنا الله الذي أنطق كل شيء. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made our organs speak. He's the one that makes everything speak whenever he wills. You could see that things like trees, things like earth, things like body organs, things like matters, فما بكت عليهم السماء, the heavens did not tear over them. The Quran very often speaks about those things as if they are actually living things, if they actually have feelings and they're responding, etc. Is this a metaphorical thing, or is this really a thing? Now, this is really important when we look at that, is that فَلَا يَكُنْ فِي صَدْرِكَ. This is very similar to it, in where it is exactly like saying فَلَا يَكُنْ فِي صَدْرِكَ حَرَجْ, meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet ﷺ that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was the one that removed the haraj from his chest. So that the Prophet ﷺ, that even the haraj, even that burden, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that controls even the burden. So the burden itself will not have any influence, will not have any hardship on the Prophet ﷺ. It's talking to the burden, just like how the ayat we're speaking about how Musa, the mother of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, when she herself was actually getting the message. Was she getting the wahi? أوحينا إلى أم موسى. What does that mean? She was a prophet herself? It doesn't mean she was a prophet herself, but أوحينا إلى أم موسى, there's a certain message, that there's a strong feeling that she was given. There was a strong feeling in where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends the salihin, or even sends to the prophets, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even those feelings, they're actually part of al-wahy min indillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is so beautiful. When we're talking about feelings, in where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala لولا أربطنا على قلبها, that she was almost going to talk about what she had done, that she was almost going to reveal the truth, that this little boy that is right now that she is nursing is actually none other but her own son. لولا أربطنا على قلبها. And I want you to look at those feelings, because this is really important, because in the Quran, when it talks about feelings, and it would be a really beautiful book to write just about the feelings and how feelings are talked about in the Quran, and at the same time how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indicates that a lot of the feelings are actually in his hands. So لولا أربطنا على قلبها, in where it was really Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that ربطنا على قلبها, that tied onto her heart. It would brought in some kind of a comfort, but that comfort, it really put her heart together. It really made her feel content. It really made her feel strong, confident. And that is really from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With the same exact logic, فَلَا يَكُنْ فِي صَدْرِكَ حَرَجٍ, so that your heart won't feel that narrowness. It's exactly like when we talk about haraj, we talk about rabt al qalb, we're talking about an inner feeling. And that's why the first thing when we talk about mental illness in Islam is that you first connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You first connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that is your first connection in order to help you cope with stress, to help you cope with the world around you. It is really بَلَا مَنْ أَسْلَمَ وَجْهَهُ لِلَّهِ وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ. And then what happens? They won't feel the khawf or the huzn with the same exact part. Here, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that controls al-haraj, is the one that controls the sorrow, is the one that controls al-khawf, fear, all those different feelings on the inside. They're not at all separate and outside of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's control. You have one side to control, which is your action, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the reaction, the cause and the effects and how it has on your heart is really part of the pattern that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created in this world. Part of that pattern, you do a certain cause, and the effect is really part of the pattern that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in this world. فَلَا يَكُنْ فِي صَدْرِكَ حَرَجٍ comes with the same exact idea, with the same exact logic that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that cause and effect, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَلَا يَكُنْ فِي صَدْرِكَ حَرَجٍ. There are two different opinions between scholars, just to mention. فَلَا يَكُنْ فِي صَدْرِكَ حَرَجٍ. One opinion is that فَلَا يَكُنْ, let there not be. In other words, it's telling the Prophet ﷺ, don't feel sorrow, don't feel burdened, that they are rejecting the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have a mission, you have a message to give, and that ends right there. Don't feel all that sorrow, which is really like in Surah Al-Kahf, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says in Surah Al-Kahf, Alhamdulillah alladhi anzala, or على عبد الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا قيما لينذر بأسا شديدا من لدنه ويبشر المؤمنين. And then the ayah continues, and then it basically goes into telling the Prophet ﷺ that don't feel that burden in your heart. Don't let that burden in your heart take over you. Now that's the same thing. فَلَا يَكُنْ فِي صَدْرِكَ حَرَجٍ. فَلَا يَكُنْ فِي صَدْرِكَ حَرَجٍ. Don't feel that burden on the inside. The other interpretation is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala khatab, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was actually talking right to the haraj, was actually directing his words to that burden, that it should not affect you. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the power to remove that burden on the heart, and that should not affect you. You should not be affected by how people will reject the message, how people will reject your words. فَلَا يَكُنْ فِي صَدْرِكَ حَرَجٌ مِّنْهُ لِتُنذِرَ بِهِ. Why? لِتُنذِرَ بِهِ. There was one reason to send the message, and that message was لِتُنذِرَ. That lam was explaining why the message was sent. لِتُنذِرَ بِهِ. It is in order for you to do a warning, to bring about a warning, to bring about a reminder. لِتُنذِرَ بِهِ. To remind others. Bih is what? Bih with what was revealed. Bih. So here the word bih, in where litunzira, to bring a warning with what was revealed onto you, with the revelation that was revealed onto you, was the part that you were going to present in order to bring about the warning. Which is why it's very important that in any da'wah that you would want to do, the first way to do da'wah is really by the Quran itself. Don't change the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't change Islam to impress others. Bring the Quran and reveal Islam what it is based on how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed it. Don't worry about impressing others. All you need to do is just reveal the revelation, just present it to them and bring about an explanation. An explanation does not mean you re-edit the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to impress others, but you present it as is. وذكرى للمؤمنين. ذكرى is a reminder. ذكرى للمؤمنين is a reminder for the mu'mineen. But here's the question. Reminder from what? Well, here's one thing. When we look at the word reminder would indicate that there is something in your memory. But does that mean that we remember something and this is something that is supposed to bring about a reminder in that way? Well, here's one thing, is that when we actually talk about a reminder, we as human beings, we have different ways of remembering things. There's a reminder in where we cannot remember unless, which is our mind, we cannot remember unless we had previous knowledge. I told you that you put your pen on the table. You remembered an image of you yourself putting your pen on the table. In other words, you had some data recorded in your mind. But this dhikra, and not every dhikra, is necessarily related to something that you remembered in the past. In other words, a data or information that is preserved in your mind. But there's another type of data that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts within you. And that data is really al-fitra. All right, that data is al-fitra. The Quran and Islam speak about our memory and speak about the information that we restore in our body and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala restored in our body, and actually consider it a lot more expansive than the memory that you have in your brain. And to have and consider that the information that is restored is only in your brain according to Islam is extremely narrow. The memory that is stored in you is a lot more than what you remember. And that is part of it, is really the fitra. The things, genes, some information that you carry in your body that you may not be aware of in terms of mind. Your intellect cannot necessarily know. Meaning, part of that is fitra. Fitra, in where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we look at further in Surah Al-A'raf, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ, when your Lord Almighty, and remember, the word إِذ actually means, and remember, أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ, when your Lord Almighty took from the backs of Adam his own children, وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ, and made them witnesses on themselves. Am I not your Lord? And they said, verily. Do we remember any of this? No, we don't remember. What we mean by remember is we don't recall any information as such. But that's why, remember, when we look at the word dhikra, it is indicating that there's more information that is in your mind information. That's why when a child is born, for example, they would put their hand in their mouth and start looking for anything to suckle, even though this child doesn't have any information restored that in order to quench his thirst or fight his hunger, that there's something that needs to be put in the mouth. Doesn't really know. It's not information that this child reacted based on. This child reacted based on a certain fitra that was given to him even when he was in his mother's womb, in where he would be sucking on his thumb, sucking on his hand, even though there was nothing of any type of tutoring that this child was getting. And having that being said, when we look at وَذِكْرَى لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, it is in order to remind, based on the fitrah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had put within us, another type of information that is sent. The fitrah that is within us, in where we would learn from looking at the world that there is a pattern. If there is a pattern to something, that means the pattern continues to a specific purpose. Whenever you would see something, there's a purpose. This is part of the dhikra. This is part of something that is within us. This is part of our instinct. But لِتُنذِرَ بِهِ, it is simply because when we're looking at these two sides, we would generally think that لِتُنذِرَ, it would generally be that if the Quran is a nadhir, is a warning for the disbelievers, then it should be a bushra lil mu'minin, shouldn't be? Well, here's the thing, is that this ayah right here is not talking about tunzira, meaning only the akhirah, but this is talking about the revelation itself. That the revelation itself was sent in order to warn, in other words, to bring about an indication that this world has a purpose to it, and it cannot be for mere play. It cannot be for no purpose. It cannot be for no essence. And that purpose is really to bring about that indication, that warning of that life is not for mere play, but you should be considerate over the purpose that is or that has preceded even the existence. وَذِكْرَى لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, at the same time for the mu'mineen. Again, it's the revelation. This is not talking about Jannah yet. This is just talking about, even for the mu'mineen, it's a reminder that there was a revelation for you to act based on, which is why the ayah continues, ittabi'u ma unzila ilaykum. This is not talking about Jannah yet. This is talking about dhikra, in order to understand about life, that there is a reminder. There's that part that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent for even the believers. It's in order to remind you that there is a pattern. There is a law that you should apply in your life. There is a law you should apply in your life. There is a step. There is a path that you should apply in your life, whether that was for those that believed, or whether that was for that rejected the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the end, is that even if you are part of the mu'mineen, you can't say that faith is enough to do. There's more to do than just faith, to have an inner belief in something, which is why the ayah continues. Well, if it is in order to do that warning, and if it is to remind for the believers, in including the believers, that is, so now this is actually talking about to both. Ittabi'u, that what was revealed, what is the whole concept, what is the whole idea. Ittabi'u, the word ittabi'u actually comes from the word tabi'a. The word tabi'a would mean to follow. But the word ittabi'u, whenever you would have a shadda on the word, this could actually indicate several things. Number one is that it can indicate ittabi'u to mean how you should have the perseverance, how you should be considerate, or it can also mean that gradual part, the gradual following of something. And it can also mean to be considerate over every intricate detail, over every single part of it. So when we look at the shadda, there are several meanings to just the shadda itself, and how the shadda itself may affect the root of the verb or the verb itself. So ittabi'u actually came in the form of a plural form, which is why it came into a plural form, because it included the believers and it included the disbelievers as well. That you should all follow what? Ma unzila ilaykum, what was revealed on to you from min rabbikum, from your Lord Almighty. Now the word min rabbikum, this is in order to indicate min rabbikum, from your Lord. In other words, for the disbelievers, why would you want to reject your Lord Almighty when all the different good things that surround you, whether from the very beginning of your creation, and the word Rabb actually indicates something that is different than ilah. The word ilah actually means God, but the word Rabb would indicate it's more of a cherishing. Lord, he's the one that is responsible for every cherishment that you're getting, and for every single thing that you're getting. And that's why we would say Rabb, meaning the Rabb is really the one that overlooks every single matter in your life and is there to take care of you and preserve the different needs that your body or your life may need. So here, اتبعوا ما أنزل إليكم من ربكم is indicating that following the path of the Lord Almighty is actually not for the sake of, not for any type of any gain that Allah will get, but it is actually for you to gain. اتبعوا ما أنزل إليكم من ربكم. In other words, your Lord Almighty, when he sends a matter, when he sends a direction for you to follow, it is in order for you to actually gain something from your Lord Almighty, which is really similar when the hadith would actually emphasize that it's really for your sake that you follow the steps that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had directed in your life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to gain anything. When you follow halal or haram and those different regulations, it's really for your own sake and not anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be gaining, as in the hadith where the hadith that was narrated by Abu Dhar, Jundub ibn Janada, when at the end of the hadith the Prophet ﷺ actually says that, or in the hadith al-Qudusi, that even if that all لو أن أولكم وآخركم وإنسكم وجنكم, even if the generations that came before and the generations that came after and the ins and the jinn كانوا على أتقى قلب رجل منكم ما زاد ذلك في من ملك شيئا, that will not increase, even if all the jinn and all the ins, all the human beings had all been as faithful as the most faithful of you, that will not increase anything in the property or in the possession of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the same time, لو أن أولكم وآخركم وإنسكم وجنكم كانوا على أفجر قلب رجل منكم ما نقص ذلك من ملكي شيئا, that would not, even if all the people and all the ins and all the jinn and all the people that ever lived before were as evil as the most of evil of all the mankind and all the people and all the jinn, even if they were such, that would not reduce anything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's possession and property over the world. And here it continues, اتبعوا ما أنزل إليكم من ربكم, follow everything and be considerate of following even the details of what was revealed from your Lord Almighty. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا مِن دُونِهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ, and do not follow. And look at the word تَتَّبِعُوا here. The word تَتَّبِعُوا, notice here that it said اتَّبِعُوا versus here تَتَّبِعُوا. تَتَّبِعُوا is different than اتَّبِعُوا, by the way, with one little addition. And you want to keep in your mind that there's a word in Lugha Arabiya, it's a general phrase that says الزيادة في المباني زيادة في المعاني. Every single increase in every single root or verb is actually an increase in an addition to the meaning. All right, زيادة في المباني زيادة في المعاني. Every زيادة في المباني, with every increase in the conjugation of a verb is actually an increase in the meaning. So what is the difference between ولا تتبعوا? here's the thing. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا is an indication. It's really similar to the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ actually says that you will follow سَنَنَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ. You will follow the path of those that are before you, before the path of those that are even deviated, even if they were to enter the ditch or the hole of a dub. A dub is, it's an animal that lives, it's kind of like a lizard in the desert. Even if they were to go inside of it, you would go inside of it and follow them. And the Prophet ﷺ was asked, so who are these people that the Muslims are going to follow in that detailed way? And is it the Yahud and the Nasara? Is it the Jews and the Christians? And he said, who else? And that's exactly today, in where we're seeing the Muslims, where they would follow, even if it meant people calling to marry men marrying men, if it seems that it's making us seem and appear like we're so tolerant and we're so modernized, then so we do. Even if it meant putting an earring on your nose, then so we will put that. It makes us look beautiful, and so it will be presented. It will be what? It will be presented in a zukhruf al-qawl. It will be presented in a narrative that will seem very attractive. People putting piercing, even if they put the piercing in between their noses, and where they usually put that for the animals, to in order to bring them to the herd, or be easily pulled, because this area, people will be putting the piercing in between both their nostrils, even though it looks like, think of it, it actually combines all the different pollutions from the nose. Combines it right there, and it looks, sorry, but it really looks so disgusting. Yet people will be so convinced that it looks beautiful. It's a form of beauty. سَنَنَ مَنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. People will follow every single detail, even if it does not follow the akhlaq or the hygiene of Islam. And that's why for Muslims, they would always do that istinshaq 5 times a day in order to clean their nostrils, to do all that. But then you will see people putting in these piercings, not realizing that it is actually collecting a lot of disgusting things. Subhanallah. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا مِن دُونِهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ. This is just an example, by the way. ولا تتبعوا من دونه أولياء. And don't follow the details of every single detail. Why? And again, what is the indication here is that you will follow one piece after another, little by little. You will not realize that you have gone very far away from the straight path, and which is why the Prophet ﷺ actually drew a line, and he said, this is the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and drew many lines on the side, and he said, and these paths are the paths of shaitan. And that's again the same way, in where the straight path is clear, but little by little people will be very far away, and they will not realize that they have gone very far from the straight line. The straight line will not appear here in the beginning. It will appear as if it was really close to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but down the road they will not realize it until it has gone very far, and it will be very different. All right, so here, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا مِن دُونِهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ. And don't follow the word awliya. Now the word min dunihi as well, let's look at it. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا مِن دُونِهِ. Min dunihi means what is below, what is lower, what is less. So what does that indicate? وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا مِن دُونِهِ. Don't follow things that are actually less than the Lord Almighty. The less than the Lord Almighty, in other words, min dunihi, they're less than the Lord. So why would you go for something that is less? And what were they taking him as awliya? Now the word awliya, il-wali, is really somebody that is an authority, somebody that you would turn to, something that you would consider as a some kind of a hierarchy, some kind of a an upper thing that you would regard as your source, whether it's a source of information, or whether it's a source of following, or whether it's a source to worship. So all those would be awliya. قليلا ما تذكرون. So this is really important, that ولا تتبعوا من دونه أولياء, whether it's in worship or whether it's in the references and what you define right and wrong from. So here, ولا تتبعوا, and don't follow things that are lower and less. In other words, that are other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be as your authority, to be as the ones that you worship. قليلا ما تذكرون. Very few would remember that. Why? Let's look at the first time that the word ذكرى and the root actually came in. قليلا ما تذكرون. In other words, look at that word. قليلا ما تذكرون generally means very few are going to be reminded. Very few are going to remember. Very few are going to take Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as their Lord Almighty and follow their Lord Almighty. قَلِيلًا مَا تَذَكَّرُونَ is actually telling you an indication that just as ذِكْرَى لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ, just as it is a reminder for the believers, from those believers, there are going to be very few to remember that. Very few that will be part of the mu'mineen, that will take this to follow their Lord Almighty as the source that defines right and wrong for them, that defines who they should worship. قَلِيلًا مَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. And from these very few, you will find as the mu'mineen. From these very few, you will find قَلِيلًا. The word قَلِيلًا was not defined, that it doesn't have an L, which is telling you that they're not just few, but they're exceptionally rare. Yesterday, I got a phone call, and a sister said, she wasn't sure about how to deal with her husband. It seems that she comes from a good home, and she was telling me that her home didn't know didn't watch those movies and all those different things. And she said, I discovered that my husband watches Netflix and he watches movies. Should I divorce? I I don't want to answer. I don't want to say what I answered her, but one side, and she said, is this very often? Is this very common that people are on Netflix and people watch those movies? And I said, unfortunately, it is. Very few within the Muslim community that are aware that such movies are really not going based on akhlaq al-Muslimin. And very few Muslims are aware that the reason why those movies are haram is not necessarily only because of different scenes. We usually think that as long as the women and the men are not doing those, let me call them illicit scenes, that's okay. But we don't realize that those movies contain words, behaviors, culture, lifestyle, violence, and the list goes on, where it will affect your mind in a way that you will not realize that this culture is a normal thing to do, that this is a norm. But for a believer, they know, because they realize وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا, because they realize that every single behavior, when you get accustomed to it, a culture that you get accustomed to it, that it becomes something that you will absorb as your own culture and as a norm. Very few Muslims right now speak of such. And she said, well, why don't we, is it halal or haram? I said, in our era, unfortunately, it's not an issue of speaking about halal or haram yet or anymore. Because if somebody were to say halal and haram right now, people would consider it as, oh, you're just passing out rules. We're right now just giving maw'idah. But it's really important to remind the rest of those that want to go at a higher level, such movies. Such a lifestyle does not befit a believer to watch, not only in certain scenes, but in all the culture that it will pass on to you. They're the words, they're the culture, they're the way people dress and the way people talk and the ideas, the purpose that they follow. Very few movies are probably giving and sending out a good message. And even if that good message is sent, even if that good message may be sent, you are spending a whole 2 hours, 2 hours of your life just to get one small message. But the rest of the 2 hours, you got many messages that are really contradicting Islam, whether it's drinking, whether it's molestation, whether it's some type of a female male relationship, boyfriend girlfriend, all those different things, nightclubs, etc. And without you realizing, you'll be absorbing that culture. You'll be absorbing that culture, and it becomes a norm, it becomes okay. Spend your time and make sure that you are aware. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا, and don't follow the paths of those that are following other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا مِن دُونِهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ, don't follow other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as your authority, as the place that you turn to. Very few people. قَلِيلًا مَا تَذَكَّرُونَ, very few people that are going to be part of the mu'mineen to be reminded of such. Very few people are going to take those in consideration, and very few people will be strong enough to keep away from that gravity. We'll continue next week, inshallah. We just did three ayat, but we'll continue next time, inshallah. I'd be happy to answer if there are any questions right here. Let me see. I was just thinking, may Allah protect this class, inshallah. That's I used to be in Quran. I'm 7, mashallah, Anisa. I'm very proud of you. Um, Here's a question. Is it also, even if we don't remember our parents retelling us the same advice they told us as a child at adulthood, that still count as a reminder? Because reminder doesn't require to be remembered, but it required to happen. So when we speak about وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا, yes, there are so many different things that indicate as what does it mean to be a reminder. And in the hadith, for example, when al-Mundhir ibn Ashaj ibn Qais, when the Prophet ﷺ told him, "Inna fika khislatayn yuhibbuhum Allah wa rasuluh," that there are two attributes or two behaviors and two qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger love in you. And when he asked what they were, and he said, Al-Hilm wal-Ana, it's Al-Hilm, forbearance, and Al-Ana, and you're gentle. In other words, you don't rush things. And then he asked a question. He says, are they qualities that I had disciplined myself into? أخلقين تخلقت بهما أم جبلني الله عليهما, or are they qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in me? So, and the Prophet ﷺ explained to him that there were qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in him. So when we look at a quality or a behavior, is it something that was disciplined in him, or did he discipline himself in them, or was it something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in him? This is really simple. This is similar, sorry. This is really similar to the ayah where it is dhikra. There's a reminder. There is something that is indicating on the inside, something that is part of the information that we may not realize that is instilled in our bodies, but we don't realize it and we move on. We don't realize it because most of the times we realize things based on our memory, based on our mind, and not based on the different things that are hidden. So the information that we may carry, such as rizq, such as ajal, such as the fitra, such as that there is essence to life, there is another power that is behind life, that there is fear. Fear is also part of those different things that we feel on the inside. What is fear? What does it remind us of? We could see that there is certain information. Why are we born to know fear? There's certain information that we know. So why would a child, when they are born, feel fear? You would fear something if it sends a signal to you, usually if it is based on information, that it is reminding you, or because you would know that there is danger, there is death, there is something to worry about. But the child, when the child is born, the first thing that they recognize is really fear and hunger. Well, maybe hunger has a certain qarsa, a certain sting in our body, and that's why we recognize it. But when the child is born, why on earth are they crying of fear? And we would know that they're afraid by stretching their arms out. They're when they're cuddled, when we put their arms together, we put the blanket around them. The fear is, we could even feel that they are afraid by racing racing heartbeats. We could tell that this child is afraid, even though we know that this child doesn't have any information of death yet. He's doesn't know of any information of death, or that there is something to be fearful of, but then he is afraid. And we could see that that's why in the hadith or in the Quran, that there's another type of information that is within us, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put within us, and that is outside of the human memory. And it's a data that is put inside of us. And it's something for us to know that this is the fitrah. The fitrah is recognized in the Quran in numerous ayat, in numerous ahadith, in where the fitrah itself acts as a tool for us to remember, for us to base even our knowledge about, to feel the essence, to understand that there is something that we have to search for, to learn more about, etc., in our life. So this is the fitrah, and which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says وَذِكْرَى, in order to remind us of another type of information that was instilled in our own creation. Here's another question that says, the movies destroyed so many minds and have caused marriage delays because both sides is looking or are looking for those movies, actors, or acting behavior. So we have sisters expect flowers or birthday gifts to be given and remembered by her man, and brothers look for a tall and slim and beautiful sisters, etc. And this is very true. Movies have really destroyed and defined defined masculinity, defined motherhood, defined fatherhood, defined rights and rights and responsibilities, defined so many things, and it's based on a certain culture. And this is really important, and that's why I said, the movies, they carry more than just a scene. Most of the times people will relate it, well, it has a bad scene, a particular bad scene, maybe some illicit scene, but don't realize that it actually carries lots of information that is a lot more than just those areas, in where it defines even how a husband should treat his wife, how a child should relate with his mother, how all these different things that are very separate away from the Islamic mannerism, very separate and very distant away from mannerism. And it's really important to be careful in what you're seeing, what you're watching, what you're exposing your mind to in your scenes, your eyes, your body, your hearing, all those different areas. Because the second that you don't realize what you're exposing your body to, this will act. Remember, dhikra lil mu'mineen, this will act as the data that is controlling you and controlling how you behave without you realizing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent you a specific data, sent you haqq, sent you the data to help you survive and help you get to the purpose of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the purpose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. But then not only the movies, but the culture around you is also sending you lots of data, and that will act as that controlling side of information that will control your behavior and what you see as right and wrong. And that's why we see a lot of the Muslims, even within the Muslim community, are absorbing such culture. And it's so easy. Right now, we're seeing many Muslims, men and women. You cannot really tell them apart with their ideas, with the rhetoric that they're using. And I will say the rhetoric that they're using, you can't really tell them away and see even the difference between them and the rhetoric that a non-Muslim would use. The rhetoric is really the same, in where the lifestyle, the words that are being used, and feminism, all that postmodern lifestyle, the postmodern thinking, they may not realize where it's coming from, but it's really coming from the life and who you surround yourself with, and also the lifestyle that you're actually absorbing from that culture. Anisa, you wanted to say something. So Anisa, go ahead. I allowed you to unmute yourself. So whoever wants to unmute himself or herself, go ahead. Sorry for taking over the discussion. Also, the people on Facebook, I'll be able to read it, inshallah.
Is it haram, like, to have your nose pierced?
So here's the thing, Anisa. Although there isn't a specific ayah or hadith to tell you that it's haram, but here's the thing, is that there are certain things, there are certain guidelines that indicate that before you even think of getting your nose pierced or your lip pierced or etc., there are certain things in where we would see that the Prophet ﷺ actually says that man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum. Whoever imitates a certain group, then they are part of them. And this is a general hadith, really. And when you see who would really pierce their nose, who would really pierce their tongue, so who would pierce their belly button, or all these different things, it's really the people that are deviant. So if you imitate those people, then you would actually be part of them. All right. Now it's not really in search of just, oh, I want a hadith that says you can't do this or you can't do that. It's in any behavior, in any action, if you could see that it's only practiced by deviated people, then if you practice it, you will be on that path. And that's why. And let me ask you, Anisa. All right, Anisa, unmute yourself, Anisa. you
Yes.
you didn't see my face yet, right? You didn't. I don't.
Yeah.
Did you ever see my face?
No.
I want to ask you something, Anisa. Now you're seeing me giving all these drus, fiqh, hadith, etc., right? What
Yeah.
if you had seen me? Now I want you to be frank with me. What if you had seen my face and you saw that I had my lip pierced and you saw that I had my nose pierced? Now I want to ask you, and answer me frankly, would you respect me?
To be honest, yeah.
You would still respect me? Okay. But on the inside, would you still see me as a good Muslimah? Or would you see me as, she's different than what I thought she would look? How would you feel about me? No, don't take it, I'm not going to take it personal. This is for you to answer. If you saw that I had my lip pierced and my nose pierced, all right, would you take my words in consideration the same way that you would take in my words in consideration if you don't see that I had any of my face or any part of my body pierced? What would you, Anisa? Now you can be frank. I won't take it personally.
Um, I I would respect that.
You would respect that?
Yes.
Let's see how many people would respect that. I will be shocked. Safa said she will be shocked. Let's see. Hamza, would you respect that? Or would you be shocked? Who would be shocked? I want to see people's responses. If you would be shocked and you would right away feel that didn't think she was like that. Now you guys would see me in the niqab, okay? So I know very well that most of you don't really know what my face looks like. All right. How would you feel if you saw that I had my tongue pierced or my nose pierced? All right. Okay. So Hamza says I would be surprised. Who else? Who would say puzzled? Fatima would be puzzled. I agree with you. I'd be puzzled too. Let's see, Yutundi. What do you think, Yutundi? Would you how would you react to it? Yutundi would probably block me. So, Dr. Henna, how would you react? Wondering, yeah, exactly. Where does she bring her thoughts from? I will say what KKKK happened. Okay. Um and all right. So here's everybody, of course, because you would all know everybody was shocked, puzzled, wondering what went wrong. Why? Because they know it is not befit for a Muslim. Even the Prophet ﷺ, even the Prophet ﷺ, and this is really important. The Prophet ﷺ had actually says, لَعْنَ اللَّهُ النَّامِصَ وَالْمُتَنَمِّصَ. The Prophet ﷺ had actually said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cursed a namisa. And namisa is the woman that, would make her eyebrows really thin. And الواشمة والمستوشمة, the woman that does or does it to others, that tattooing. And الواصلة والمستوصلة, the woman that would put hair extensions and all that. Why? Tahir ibn Ashur indicated that because that was a common culture amongst the women that were, let's just call them bad women, that was their way to invite men. Hey, I'm here to flirt. I'm here to flirt. You can flirt with me. So the Prophet ﷺ indicated that such a behavior, such a lifestyle, such a way of dressing does not befit a Muslim woman. So included in that is any culture in where, whether that was in dressing in a certain way or whether that was in piercing in a certain way, in other words, changing your appearance to invite others that I am also ready, or I am here, bringing in an indication that I fit the group of women that are inviting you to look at my understanding of beautification. And my body is the principle. My body is the principle. And even if I were to go in pain, I'm willing to go in pain just to attract others. And that's why people like some scholars like Al-Ghazali considered that even if it is ear piercing, considered that it is haram, because any type of harm that you would put on the body. Let's take it back to the ayah. I think it's in Surah Al-A'raf, in where Iblis will say that I will order them to change their appearance. Why? As a way to change their hearts. In order to change their heart, to change the feelings on and remember the data? Remember the data that we talked about, the data that we don't necessarily know about ourselves, and it's not in our memory, but it's on the inside, the fitrah. Iblis was saying, I will order them to change their appearance on the outside. لَأَمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلْيُغَيِّرُنَّ خَلْقَ اللَّهِ. So they could change the creation that they were created in as a means and a way to change their fitrah, as a way to change the data that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created within you. So when we look at piercing, we cannot separate it at all from that general changing of creation, the tattooing, the the way the Prophet ﷺ had actually described of shaping eyebrows, the tattooing, changing the body, the all those different things that people might change in their bodies in order to appear as if they have actually become modernized, etc. And when in reality, the Quran was indicating that that is the satanic way in changing the data that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in you, which is dhikra, in order to hold you, to hold on to you that sign and that little piece called fitra to connect you with the Lord Almighty. What will the shaitan do? The shaitan will not have the power to control the data on the inside of you, which is the fitra, but he will have the way in order to do the wiswas, in order to speak to you, in order to have a certain dialogue with you, a certain information to change with you. And that is by changing on the outside of your appearance, on the outside of your body, in order to control the data that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put into you, which is the fitrah. All right. You see how the game is played here? The game is played by the shaitan in order to change your fitrah. He changes the outside of you, changes the outside, adding a tattoo, adding a piercing, adding all those changes in the creation, Botox, and who knows, all those different things that they're adding right now. And all of a sudden, the person doesn't look the same way that they used to look. It's about focusing on the appearance. The focus on the appearance distracts you from focusing on the fitrah. Your focus on the appearance distracts you from focusing on the heart. Your focus on the appearance is making you focus on how people think of you. And that acts as the profile that that regulates, or let me say, that sends the message on how and which type of people you fit in with. If you would see me pierced and having that tongue piercing, etc., you would know that I don't fit as part of the necessarily the believers, but I would fit more with gains, more with people that are constantly probably working on watching those movies, and you would expect that I would use language that is foul language, etc., all that. You would know that it doesn't befit a believing woman. It doesn't befit a woman that has been learning the akhlaq of the Sahaba. You would know it doesn't match. It doesn't suit. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said in general, "Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum." Whoever imitates a group of people, then they are part of them. So imitate the Salihin. The Salihin, they would not do such a thing. It doesn't befit them. Why? Because a salih would be focused on their qalb, on their heart, and they wouldn't be focused on their appearance. It doesn't mean that you should be shabby looking and you should be ugly looking. Not at all. It doesn't mean so whatsoever. But that's why the Quran and the hadith would regulate when it's okay to appear in certain images to your husband, at your to you, in front of your maharim, in front of your sisters, etc. But there are certain appearances, subhanallah. If I can get carry on, and I don't want to take too much. All right, so I think you guys got the picture. Putting makeup become halal among Muslims, so going next level like piercing is no different according to their understanding. Okay, so well, putting makeup, it actually takes the same ruling, so you don't put makeup. And that's why I love Ibn Ata in one of the tafsir, in where he actually indicated in tafsir in Surah Al-Ahzab, what was that? وَلَا يَبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا, when that they should not reveal their beautification, and then illa, and then it would indicate except what normally appears. And he says وَلَا يَبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ, that they should not reveal their beautification. And Ibn Ata actually distinguished between two types of beautification. The first beautification, he said, is the natural beautification. And the second beautification is the acquired beautification. So the acquired beautification, whether that meant makeup or whether that meant, you know, ear piercing or different beautification. The Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ indicated certain beautifications that should not be appearing in public. And Ibn Ata explains that the beautification, so let's say a woman is not a niqabi, which is covering the face is a sunnah, with differences of opinions between scholars on whether it's obligatory or a sunnah. But Ibn Ata considered that if if for example, we're talking about appearing face, for example, that she would not add any type of a beautification, in other words, acquired beautification, and that the part that is permissible is the part that is the 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 beautification, the natural beauty, but of course with hiding the rest of the body. And that's why in the hadith, although there's Khalid ibn Duraik that is in the narration in that hadith, which is the hadith when the Prophet ﷺ had seen Asma bint Abi Bakr, when the Prophet ﷺ had seen her, and he said, Ya Asma, inna al-mar'a إذا بلغت المحيض لم يجز أن يرى منها غير هذا وهذا, and indicated that if a woman reaches the age of puberty, that is the age of menstruation, that she should not reveal except her face and her hands, the hands, in other words, the wrists, up to the wrists. And the Prophet indicated that it's really the face and the hands. And Ibn Atta explained that meaning without any additional cosmetics or beautification to be added onto that. So having that being said, if we are to say, the differences of opinion, especially, for example, Indian and Pakistani culture, they would wear the ear, the nose piercing, as I think on their wedding day or something like that. Then and it's worn by muhtaramat, or let me say, believing women, and believing women, or let me say good women as well. So that would be different than living in the West. So in the sub-Indian continent, that is practiced by the women that are salihat and women that are not salihat. So that's a different story. But in here, at least living in the West, we know that it is really practiced by people, and that's why, for example, it wouldn't be seen as professional. It is practiced by usually people that are more younger generation, hippie generation, more of a generation that is indulged in this lifestyle, which does not suit a believing man or a believing woman. Here's another comment. I think people don't separate culture from Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easier on us to obey and submit to His will. Ameen ya Rabbi. And Jazakumullah khairan, everyone. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We really took really long, but inshallah, there's khair in it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward us for the time that we had spent, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for listening to the halaqah. I know that it takes a lot of effort, especially when it's Zoom. It takes a lot of effort to listen, especially when the person is not in front of you. It's sometimes, I know, it takes a lot of power when the person is not moving their hands in front of you. My daughter, I guess, is the most privileged here. She's sitting next to me, and gets to see everything, and without without all that barrier. So Allah yarda anku ya Rabbi. Habibat qalbi, Safa, she said, "Inti fi qulubna, habibti." And Allah yarda anku ya Rabbi. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all an inspiration, and make us all get the ikhlas. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us better than what people think of us. And just to answer the question, that way people won't think that I don't have any piercing whatsoever. So just to make it clear, and people won't think that, oh, she probably has under the niqab some piercing. No, I don't. And I absolutely do not like any of those, especially nasal piercing. I think it is the most disgusting thing, because I'm sorry, with all the nasal discharge, what do you do with the nasal discharge that is hooked on that ring or on that nose piercing? I'm sorry, that is disgusting. This is extremely disgusting, and especially the ones that they put in between their nostrils. That is not just disgusting, but I think it is the most humiliating thing that you could do to a human being, is compare them to an animal by putting them a nose piercing between their nostrils. I'm sorry, it is extremely, extremely disgusting. The second I look at it, I get so grossed out. Straightforward. I get so grossed out, and I'm like, what are these people doing to themselves? And sorry about that. But Allah al-Musta'an, this is, and also the tongue piercing is even worse. But Allah al-Musta'an, it's so sad how we're seeing people just follow a culture without even looking at the hygiene and the appearance and the effect on their heart. And Allah al-Musta'an. Yes, it's really disgusting. Exactly. Think of it this way. It's like you're collecting all the nasal discharge on that nose ring. Yuck. All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Yes, it is ew. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Anisa. Wa alaikum assalam. I'm very proud of you, Anisa, for attending. Young, but mashallah, very, inshallah, very intelligent to even speak those questions.
You know that princess that you saw last time?
That's you?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I am so lucky. Ya Allah, I am so lucky. She's the princess. Zainab, did you hear that? It's the princess again. We are so lucky to have you join us. It's a real princess. I've always wanted to see a princess, and I finally got that.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. All right.